to a great community of Bodhisattvas. Also, Bhagavan was absorbed in concentration in categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also, Datanda Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara looked for the very practice of profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara. Passionate and son of the lineage tree who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection. He said that in the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should often be like this. Beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. Feeling, discrimination, composition, factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristics and produced unstill, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition, factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no element in soul enough to including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extension of ignorance, and so on up to including no aging and death, and no extension of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no nothing. Shariputra, Bodhisattvas rely on one perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration, without fear, having completely passed beyond error to reach the end. All the Buddhas at 1 or 3 times also manifestly completely awakened to unsurpassable perfect complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, this is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Pala Samgate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train find perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose in that concentration, commending the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated, even at the light of it has rejoiced. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas were overjoyed and highly praised as spoken by the Bhagavan. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain this state of Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by may I attain this state of Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain this state of a Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to the last week of this module and the last week of BSP for this year. It seems that Geshe is doing a last-ditch effort to finish chapter number 7, and I think that looking at how much he covered today, I think he's going to do that. So that's good, which means that means that we also have to probably try to do a great leap forward, which is a bit counter. What I thought of starting with is counterproductive to that, but now we have 3 secondary offenses left on the list of 46 secondary offenses, and it seems that tomorrow is the last tutorial, because on Thursday is the last day. We're going to finish at noontime, not have a tutorial afternoon. So I thought of trying to do at least 2 secondary offenses at this session and keep the last one for tomorrow. Last one is pretty easy. So let's begin with, or it's pretty easy to abstain from the last secondary offense. So let's look at, I think that we haven't covered 44, have we? All right, so if out of bitterness or laziness, you do not praise the qualities of another, or do not give your approval to well-spoken words by saying good, it is a secondary offense of not expressing praise for the good qualities of others. So this is quite straightforward. I think that as a general advice, we say that we should not be looking for the faults of others or criticize others, but we should look for the good qualities of others. So this is what we do in general. I think that not only in the world, but I think that also when we engage with Dharma friends, or when we engage with each other in general, the people that are close to you, if you want to heighten positive behavior, it's good to kind of make an effort to point it out. But also I think that as we said before, when we spoke of anger, there's in developing patience, sometimes there's the tendency of downplaying someone's good activities. You know, that's good, but they're doing it because of such and such. So that's good, but they're only pretending. Or that's good, but they have this fault or the other fault. So when I think about this secondary offense, and when I think of how teachers that we look up to speak of the good qualities of others, I think that it's seldom, or maybe never happens, that you hear that this but coming at the end of the sentence. You know, it's like, what they've done is good, but blah, 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 blah. You know, it seems that there's a direct, unabashed, let's say, reference to something that was positive. So it has an influence, I think. Not only I think it gives an encouragement to others in terms of developing good behavior, but I think that also directly addresses our mind. Now, it's not always easy to look at the good qualities of another person, particularly someone that we dislike, and not to praise that or think that it's good with a mind that really delights in it, but it's part of our practice. If we don't do that, it's a secondary offense. Of course, there are those people that we have problems with, it becomes more difficult, but in general, I think that if we tend to take it into a practice and deliberately try to also make sure that we focus on the good qualities of others, and when the time is right, in the right situation, we don't always have to make a big fuss out of it. Sometimes when you make a big fuss of someone's good quality, it becomes a bit exaggerated, in some sense out of place. But if there's a place for that, then skillful mean would be also to express it in the way that is right for them, right for you, and also right for the people around them. Any questions? It's quite straightforward, I think. All right, next one says, if due to disturbing emotions or laziness, you do not suppress, punish, or banish someone when it is warranted, it is a secondary offense of not subjugating someone as conditions warrant. So up until now, we looked at the way of benefiting others in ways that are more peaceful, like giving assistance to someone at hand, giving assistance financially, giving assistance to the ill, to the sick, to the elderly, to someone that experiences fear, praising someone's good qualities. You know, so all of those things were assisting others with more peaceful activities. Here it speaks about, here in the next one, it speaks of having to be more fierce. Yeah, more fierce in our interactions with others. And if we do not do that because of laziness or bitterness, or you can say also other afflictive states of mind, if you don't do that, where there's a place to do that, that's a secondary offense, which indicates that as bodhisattvas, sometimes, when you think of how you would treat others with a sense of compassion, we have the sense that always you need to be pleasant and soft and gentle in your approach to others. But also there is a time and place for being quite fierce in your approach towards others. Sorry?
Tough love.
Yeah, tough love. So now we can, in Tantra, sometimes we speak of the 4 activities that we develop in our tantric practice. So you develop peaceful activities, controlling activities, magnifying or magnetizing, increasing activities, and wrathful activities. So all of those activities are motivated by compassion. And this is part of this explanation. So it not only addresses the type of behavior that we should have, not only from a tantric perspective, but also it is common to the sutra path. Sometimes, as Chuki said, you need to express tough love, particularly if you see someone that is harmful to themselves and harmful to the people around them, and the negative actions need to be stopped. And the way that you can stop it is through forceful means, and there's a time and place for that. Oh, it's okay, thank you. Then if you fail to do that because you're lazy, in a sense that you couldn't care less, or it's just you have to go out of your way to do it, or out of bitterness, either for the person involved or for other people that are being harmed, or because of other afflictions as well. Like, for example, thinking that I don't want the person to dislike me, or if they get angry with me, they will not give me what I want, or they will not reward me in the way that I want them to. So other afflictions can also play a role in not correcting someone's behavior in a way that is more forceful. So if we do that, if we refuse from correcting others when conditions warrant, as it says here, it is a secondary offense. I looked at Thupten Chodron's commentary, and she also speaks about, for example, how, when you will look at generally the judicial system, in different countries, we have a prison system, a corrective system. So, in those corrective systems, you could say that people are incarcerated in a way that is forceful. There's a forceful way of dealing with people. So in a conduct as bodhisattvas, you think that I don't want that person to be punished or I don't want that people to be dealt with according to the law because I'm a bodhisattva, I shouldn't behave in that way. Well, if we don't follow the system of rules wherever we live, if we undermine either the judicial system or the justice system or the law system, in some sense you can say that we also harm society. We harm kind of the fabric of our society. So this is also something that we can bring into our consideration while considering things like that. Any questions? Actually, since the last one is fairly easy, let's also cover that, and that would be the end of the 46 secondary offenses. If you have miraculous powers and spells, I said that it's quite easy because I think that most of us don't have it, at least I don't have it. If you have miraculous powers and spells and you do not use them to instill fear, confront or prevent a person who does not possess vows from taking that which is given out of faith when it is warranted to instill fear, confront or prevent a person who does not possess vows from taking that which is given out of faith, it is a secondary offense of not using miraculous powers to threaten and the like. When I say it's quite easy, I think that probably most of us don't have miraculous powers. If you have miraculous powers which are attributed to, for example, attaining calm abiding and then developing series of steps for developing some powers, you have those powers and you don't use them in a forceful way in order to prevent certain things from happening, that would be a secondary offense. Any questions?
Seems to be not a question, but it's like seems to build on the previous one in that it's a much more, presumably you've already done number 45 if you have those powers.
Yeah.
I mean, you've already taken that remedial action, it hasn't been effective, and so you've got to up the ante if you have those powers, basically.
Yeah.
Just in relation to 45, sometimes it's a dilemma in our society. We're supposed to respect our elders, at least that's the way I was brought up. And if you're in a situation where somebody is older than you and they're acting in a way that's, disrespectful or not ideal, it's hard as the younger person to approach them.
Yeah.
And because it looks like you're disrespecting.
Yeah.
And it's been an issue for me in the past.
Yeah. I agree with you. Sometimes, particularly sometimes when I think of our community, for example, when we deal with each other, sometimes, you have to talk to someone that is much older than you and to give them advice. I feel sometimes uncomfortable about it because sometimes I feel that someone that is older than me has more life experience, so, if I either try to advise them on a particular thing or sometimes even be forceful, if there is a time and place for that, it feels a bit uncomfortable.
I think there can be many situations, like I was thinking that as somebody, like obeying those who are more senior rank than you,
Yeah.
and they're not challenging them and those of senior rank, even that person might be physically having to challenge. There's an employee-employer situation where it's all very well to challenge, but you might lose your job and you're prepared to do that. So it needs to be contextualised that it's out of laziness and bitterness, not out of necessarily, you've got to use the wisdom aspect as well.
Yeah, skillful means.
This one is actually out of laziness or disturbing emotions.
Emotions, yes.
Or afflictions in general. Yeah. But also, this point reminds me that this point also reminds me that I had, when I was studying Tibetan in India, one of my classmates was a nun that was in the 50s, I think. She went to a center where the geshe was in his 30s. And, in my conversation with her, she said that kind of sometimes she finds it really difficult because she felt that in some sense she has more life experience. So she felt that, it's really weird. She said that she found it sometimes difficult to take advice from a person that was much younger than her, or did not experience the things that she experienced. So, yeah, sometimes in reality, sometimes it's more difficult.
Sometimes the geshes find it difficult to advise for that combination of things.
Yeah.
And also that they've grown up in a monastic system that is mainly men.
Yeah.
So I know that sometimes they feel really awkward in that situation, the culture, the gender, age.
So I don't think that I've said anything that is useful to what you said, other than I have sometimes similar difficulties. Yeah.
And then what's the disturbing emotion? Like maybe is that respect that you feel for them as an older in some situations that should that just go out the window because it's more appropriate to
It wasn't doing something negative, but I remember saying something to my father. When he was actually what turned out to be the last year of his life. I didn't know that. Just suggesting that he stopped driving. It's the only time we ever had an argument, but within a week, he had a fall, which convinced him from his own side to stop driving. Mm-hmm. So even though it sort of felt like, well, I'll back off now, and if I ever say another thing, he can do it himself.
I think that here it speaks about behaving in a way that is more forceful. So I think that probably there's a difference between trying to advise someone that is older and being forceful with them. I agree that it's harder to be forceful with someone that is older than you. And with this, I think that probably skillful means is, and wisdom in general is the probably way to go, although it's a very general answer. I think that when you look at what's happening in each and every situation, the answer of how to do with that skillfully would be different. But I agree that it's harder to be forceful with someone that is older than you. But I think that probably if you have some authority over, in one area, like for example, I think that, if you're a medical doctor, a young medical doctor, you can be forceful with your patient when you might be 30 and they might be 70. You can be forceful with them in terms of, reprimanding them or scolding them for not taking the medication or doing the right thing. So, if you have a certain skill and authority or power, I think that probably some situations could be easier.
And you see how, just in a medical situation, sometimes the nurses and so forth do it with a sort of humorous attitude first, and then when that doesn't work, they get more forceful. For a lot of people, the humorous attitude works.
Yeah, skillful means is the key. I remember that we have like a suggested, code of conduct here at the center. Like, for example, like a suggested or recommended dressing code. I think that sometimes it's something that is more involved with how we see places of worship in Australia rather than rules that are taken from Tibetan society. It's like, for example, when I came here, there was this guideline, a rule that you can't come to the Gompa wearing shorts or
not showing your knees.
Singlets, yeah. But this is totally Christian. I mean, kind of in Tibetan society, you see people going into temples wearing shorts, or you see people going into temples. I wouldn't say singlets like, really exposed singlets, but no, it's not that they have to cover themselves in a way that is really religious. So I remember that there was one time, someone was like sort of VI situation, and someone came into the Gompa, and the person went to them and said, you can't come to the Gompa being dressed like that. And I felt really uncomfortable about it. So you could say that you're in a position of power, but still, you need to be skillful about
I would think that's
certain
okay, as long as you
situations.
say here, just put the shawl on your knees when you sit down, that will happen there about it. Rather than say, you've got to get out. Anyway.
So Paul is asking if he can raise a point. Before he does that, Kate is asking what examples of miraculous powers. Well, for example, it is said that you attend different different clairvoyances when you attend karma binding. So you have the ability to a certain degree, to see someone else's mind, right? To read the mind or to see into past and future lives. I guess that more of the miraculous powers is to see far away places. And then they speak about also those powers they're called quick leg, to traverse, to cover a long distance over a short period of time. There's even kind of sometimes they speak about the ability to fly. Who doesn't want to be Peter Pan or Wendy? Anyway, Paul, over to you.
Yeah, I just had a question around, so number 45 there. If you act in a way that's preventing someone from doing harm, but you're actually doing something which, conventionally is a level of harm towards them. So, for example, people engaged in doing some business that's extremely harmful, and in preventing them from doing that kind of business, they lose an enormous amount of money, for example. Yeah. Is there a mixed karma there in terms of you also experiencing results from, causing that level of harm to them?
Yeah, I think that's particularly relevant to your line of work, or I wouldn't say line of work, to your kind of activist thing where kind of, you know, when you think about, for example, trying to prevent mining companies or other companies that create a lot of damage in the environment from doing their business. Now, so if you cause them to lose money, and you could say that if you cause them to lose money, there are also people that will suffer on the personal level. On that, is that still a legit thing? I think that it's probably, I would say that it's still, I think, legit in a general way. I think that the rules is that, no, the way that you can assess it is whether you're motivated by compassion or the wish for justice, or whether you have some sort of vengeful, hateful motivation, which is sometimes, I think, difficult to really to assess on a personal level. Like, for example, when I think of some people in the Australian market, like, for example, Gina Reinhardt, for example, you know, not only I think that she's involved with some forms of mining, which are very destructive, I think that also just her type of behavior is unethical. So sometimes when I think of people like that, you know, I think that I don't mind if they fall from the riches, if they lose all the assets, which I think that probably I'm verging towards being vindictive rather than just kind of wishing for their harm to subside. So I think that if you're motivated by a more positive way of thinking, which kind of thinks of the greater good of others, like thinking that may they stop their harmful activities, even if it comes on a personal cost, may they stop their harmful activities, that's probably a better attitude. I think that that's legit.
I mean, I was thinking of the examples this year that governments had to make these decisions, and that based on, for the collective good, to have businesses closed down, have borders closed down, many, many decisions like that. People lost their livelihood, they lost their businesses, but it was for the greater good.
Yeah.
So I think they weren't doing that on a case-by-case basis. It was really, this is for the greater good, you know. So I think if we're coming from that point of view.
Yeah, so I don't know if people at home heard what Chukita was saying. She said that looking at this year, where government had to make tough decisions with lockdown, closing down businesses, limiting businesses, and so forth. Of course, many people,
Places of worship.
Places of worship. Of course, many people suffered on a personal level, economic or social level, or otherwise. But that was for the greater good. You know, so there are people that are harmed on an individual level, but it's still done for the greater good. Paul says in the example of a boat full of arhats, there are different interpretations of whether a negative result was experienced. Yeah. Yeah, that's a greater good. Yeah.
You'd still go to prison.
Sorry?
You'd still go to prison.
Yeah. You'd still go to prison if you behave in such a way.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. All right. We have only half an hour for this session, so let's make sure that we cover some of the things that we've spoke of with Geshe-la. So what I thought of doing was just to look at just the last couple of points from the section of laziness. So we spoke about the 3 types of laziness. The last one is laziness, abandoning laziness that is disheartened about virtue. The 4th point is saying there is no suffering in that and happiness increases, therefore it is reasonable to take joy in that. Today we started with point A. Due to such reasons in terms of progressing along the path, they are explained to be more knowledgeable than a Hinayani. So let's just read quickly. Sorry. Okay. There it is. So if the bodies are due to the strength of the mind of enlightenment, he exhausts his previous negativities and gathers oceans of merit. Hence, he is said to excel hearers. So, in the study of Chandrakirti's supplement to the Middle Way, Chandrakirti takes Nagarjuna's commentary, Nagarjuna's text, the root of wisdom, and explains Nagarjuna's text, the root of wisdom, and applying it to the 10 grounds, from the first Bodhisattva ground to the 10th Bodhisattva ground, beginning with the first ground, where Bodhisattvas attend the high practice of the perfection of generosity. So one of the statements that Lama Tsongkhapa makes in his illumination of the thought, which explains Chandrakirti's text, the supplement to the Middle Way, is that when Bodhisattvas get to the first ground, they outshine hearers and solitary realizers in terms of their lineage. They outshine hearers and solitary realizers also by way of wisdom. Now, when we use those terms, outshine and surpass hearers or solitary realizers, it doesn't mean to say that that the Hinayanis are inferiors and Mahayanis are superiors. It just means to say that in terms of the strength of mind, in terms of the method side and the wisdom side, Bodhisattva's mind surpasses the mind of hearers and solitary realizers. So by way of lineage, it is because of bodhicitta. In that, as we said before, because of bodhicitta that is rooted in great compassion, there is a greater power to the accumulation of merit. Also, there is a greater power to the purification of negativities. So in that sense, it is a mind that is stronger than the mind of a hearer or solitary realizer. In terms of gathering the accumulations and purifying negativities and obscurations, but also it is said that in terms of wisdom, also a bodhisattva mind surpasses even the minds of hearers and solitary realizer arhats. In that it is said that, and this is an interesting point. They say that since bodhisattvas realize selflessness through limitless reasoning, this also surpass hearers and solitary realizers by way of wisdom, which you can say that what it indicates is it seems that hearers and solitary realizers might use lesser degrees of reasoning for realizing emptiness or selflessness, whereas bodhisattvas use limitless reasoning. I mean, there's a lot of debate with respect to that, because you could say that, well, what difference does it make if at the end, according to the consequence school, hearers and solitary realizer arhats realize emptiness. Even before that, on the path of seeing, they realize emptiness. It's the same type of emptiness. So what difference does it make? It's a different explanation with respect to that. Like, for example, some say that it is because they do it over such a great period, over 3 great countless eons, that they meditate on emptiness, or at least at the time of being a bodhisattva, they do it longer than hearers and solitary realizer arhats, then the power of realization of emptiness becomes greater. That's one way of approaching that. Another way of approaching that is to say that there could be some more reasoning that they're using, but I think that that's maybe a weaker point. In terms of the reasoning that we use in order to realize emptiness or selflessness, there is the reasoning of not inherently one, not inherently different, not inherently one, not inherently many. The 7-fold rational analysis in which an object is found or the imputed object is sought and is not found, or the 4 ways of eliminating the 4 ways of production, eliminating or refuting the 4 extremes of existence. So I think that it is difficult or the reasons of dependent origination, I think that it would be difficult to hold that hearers and solitary realizers don't use those reasonings. Why wouldn't they? I mean,
But they wouldn't use the most subtle level of dependent origination.
well, they have to use the most subtle level of dependent origination from the viewpoint of the consequence school, because if they don't realize the subtle level of dependent origination, they wouldn't be able to realize emptiness. And one of the unique points of the consequence school is that hears and sorry to realizes also realize emptiness. So I think that Geshe Tsultrim also said before that understanding that limitless reasoning path could also be explained in terms of the support for the realization of emptiness is bodhicitta. Since to meditate in bodhicitta, you also need limitless reasoning. And bodhicitta is the thing that supports the realization of emptiness. You can also say that the realization of emptiness is done through limitless reasoning. So all
the power of the bodhicitta that makes that stronger realization.
I think that the power of bodhicitta makes the realization stronger, particularly when you consider that at some point, the realization of emptiness needs to eliminate cognitive obscurations. So only if they have a very strong realization of emptiness, they would be able to eliminate cognitive obscurations. In terms of the emptiness, it's the same type of emptiness that hears and sort of realize, but hears and sort of realizes power of the mind cannot eliminate cognitive obscurations. So what gives the mind its power is bodhicitta, and also the amount of time that one meditates on emptiness. Seeing is seeing though. What does it mean?
It means once you have that direct perception, you have.
Oh yeah. Once you have a perceptual realization of emptiness, you've realized emptiness. Or you can even say once you have conceptually realized emptiness, you've realized it conceptually. But in terms of the method side of bodhicitta makes the realization of emptiness be stronger, in that it has the ability to eliminate not only afflictive obscurations, but cognitive obscurations as well. And also because it takes more time to do it, then bodhisattvas meditate on emptiness for a longer time, and therefore it does become a more strong realization. So anyway, that was verse 29 that comes under the heading of due to such reasons, in terms of progressing along the path, they're explained to be more knowledgeable than Hinayanis, so more skillful than Hinayanis, you can say. And therefore, it is unreasonable to be disheartened in the bodhisattva conduct. This is what Geshe-la quoted, or not quoted, this is where Geshe-la read through that verse from Shantideva's text, which is a verse that Isones quotes often, ascending from ground to ground, from path to path. Having mounted the horse of the mind of enlightenment that dispels all the disheartenment and weariness and proceeds from happiness to happiness, which one who knows of this mind would lapse into despondency? So that's laziness of discouragement. So as we said before, when you look at chapter number 7, that teaches the way to develop joyous effort, Shantideva here takes an approach from two perspectives. One of them is getting rid of the things that don't let you develop joyous effort. So we spoke about laziness of indolence, laziness of being attracted to activities that are ignoble, which means that are non-dharmic. And then laziness of discouragement, either discouragement about the goal, thinking that how can someone like me attain enlightenment, or discouragement about the means to attain enlightenment, thinking that if I have to practice for such a long time and give away my arms, head, legs, and so forth, how can I be able to do that? And then discouragement about it taking such a long time and also having to experience samsaric suffering all that long. So that's one side of that we need to deal with in order to undertake joyous effort. The other one is to develop the 4 powers. This is from the positive side. So, looking at the outline, It begins with increasing the strength of conditions conducive to joyous perseverance in verses 31 and 32. So let's just briefly read through those verses. It says, the army, for the sake of accomplishing the welfare of sentient beings, are interest. We said that interest is the same as esteem and belief and aspiration. Steadfastness or stability, joy, and relinquishment or the power of suspension. Interest is developed through fear of suffering and contemplating its benefits. That's the first power. The power of interest or esteem is developed through fear of suffering and contemplating its benefits. Thus, shall abandon its discordant classes and make effort in order to increase joyous effort through the power of interest, pride, joy, and relinquishment, diligence, and mastery. So there are a couple of things I wanted to point out with respect to this section, beginning with something that's a very nice explanation that Khenpo Kumpel provides in his commentary, this one. It's found in page 244, towards the bottom of the page, above point 2 of implementing the favorable conditions for diligence. So he says, I will read through that section. Even so, we may still consider ourselves unequal to the task of accomplishing the welfare of beings. But for example, just as the son of the Chakravartin, a will-turning king, who turns the wheel of power, is able to establish others in virtue by relying on his 4 armies, in the same way, the Buddha who turns the wheel of Dharma has given to his Bodhisattva children 4 forces also, so that they too can accomplish the welfare of beings. So these 4 forces are aspiration, steadfastness, joyfulness, and relinquishment. Now, what it says is that the latter 3 derive from the first, which means aspiration. So that's one important point with respect to the 4 powers. The most important power is the first one, the power of aspiration, interest, esteem, or belief. That's the most important power that we need to work on. And if we work on the first power, the power of esteem, the power of aspiration, it seems that the implication is that the other 3 will naturally come by. So the first one is the most important. That's one point that we need to look at. Then it says, with respect to the first power, aspiration, it is based on the fear of suffering, the result of negative actions, and it is to be cultivated through reflecting on the benefits of liberation and the advantages of aspiring to do this, which means that when you look at the first power, which is the most important, it is cultivated through thinking, developing fear of the results of your actions, which means that for the first power, a crucial point is to have trust in the working of karma. That it seems to me, at least to me, the way that I read it, it seems, and also looking at the other things that Shantideva mentions with respect to the first power, in contemplating the causes, contemplating the results, he puts an emphasis on the trust that we have in karma. So the first power is called the power of interest and so forth. The reason that we have different translations for that word is that, first of all, the word is very complicated word to translate into English, because an English translation of that word will always be inadequate.
Because when you think of esteem versus belief, it's quite a different sense.
Yeah. All of those different meanings are included in one word in Tibetan. So the word is meba. When this word meba is explained in Minds and Mental Factors, it is said that sometimes it is called conviction, sometimes it's called belief. It is said that it's a mental factor in which the mind holds a certain object to be as it was ascertained, which means as it was realized, and not none other than how it was realized, which means that you're totally convinced that this is the way that it is. So it's not just believing in something. It's like it has the support of valid cognition to the point in which you hold it to be just as it was ascertained by valid cognition. So that's the way that it was translated in, that it is explained in Minds and Mental Factors. That's one explanation. Another way of using that word is in tantric practices where you visualize something. So when you visualize something, you use the same word, meba, which I think also has an interesting implication, because when you visualize yourself as the deity, or when you visualize the deity in front, you have to be certain that you are the deity. So you're not just visualizing something, you're also developing clear appearance and divine pride. So you have that sense of conviction that you are the deity. So it's not just creating an image, it has something more involved with that. So that's another meaning of the word meba, right? To visualize something, but also with a sense of conviction that it is exactly like that. Also, it is said to be a result of faith and aspiration. So it seems that in the commentary that we have here, also Getze Dhammarinchen and the other commentary speak both of belief, faith, and also aspiration. Aspiration is a state of mind that sees something, see a particular object, a positive object, a virtue, let's say, and it strives for it, it seeks it. So with this word that is used here for the power of esteem, the power of interest, we also use that meaning in order to understand the power of interest. So we see the qualities of karma, in a sense that, for example, here, we see the qualities of liberation, and also the qualities of the states, that the virtuous actions that bring about the state of liberation. And thereby we seek that. So thinking of how we form our understanding of the word that is used here, the most important thing is trust in the work of karma, to be convinced that karma works in a particular way. Negative actions produce suffering, virtuous actions produce happiness. But it's not only being convinced in that, you also add to that the meaning of seeking that, which means you seek to eliminate negative actions, and also you seek to develop positive actions. All of those different things are included within one syllable or two syllables in Tibetan, meba. So, as Khenpo Kumpen says, the latter three derive from the first, namely aspiration, which is the root. Aspiration, interest, belief. Aspiration is based on fear of suffering, the result of negative actions, and is to be cultivated through reflecting on the benefits of liberation and the advantages of aspiring to do this. So that's the first part. Also, following that in relation to verse 32, it says, it is through the four forces of aspiration, and he calls that a keen interest in the Dhamma. So that's another thing that we add to the understanding of the first power. So the first power is not only this deep conviction in the working of karma, but it's also on that basis, having that sense of aspiration, which can be translated as having keen interest in the Dhamma. The keen interest in the Dhamma, I think that here is, the way that I understand it, is to develop keen interest in the practice of Dhamma, which is subsumed under doing what you ought to be doing and stopping what you need not to be doing, right? What we call taking up and casting aside. So that's the first power. The second power is steadfastness, and Khenpo Kumpen also calls that self-confidence, which I thought this is quite nice when we think of not only developing stability in your practice in order to develop joyous effort, but also having a sense of self-confidence that you can actually do that. So your self-confidence would also be, I think, paired up with the elimination of laziness, of discouragement. Then, so he says, you have stability and self-confidence, whereby you do not go back on what you have begun. That's the second part. The third power is joyfulness, whereby one takes pleasure in what one is doing. So particularly, we'll cover that later, but I think that when you think of knowing that when you cultivate virtuous actions, not only you think that that contributes to my happiness and well-being in the future, but also particularly here in Mahayana way, you think that that is getting me closer and closer to the state of enlightenment where I'll be able to be of benefit to others. So you take joy in that. You also take joy in avoiding negative actions, so purifying your negativities and obscurations. So that's the third part. The fourth one is relinquishment. And Kempo Kumpen says where this is called for, when this is called for. So when this is called for, and we will cover that tomorrow or the day after, is knowing when to take a break.
Yeah, everyone got into that in discussion group.
Yeah.
Relaxation.
I mean, it's interesting because the way that it is explained is that you need to know what your limitations are. You need to stop before you burn out, and then have a rest and be ready to rise up again and continue with your practice as soon as you're rested. So it's not like an open-ended relaxation. It's more like you think that I'm going to have now an hour break or 2 hours break so that I'm refreshed enough to then make effort again. So again, we need to be skillful in that, and we'll cover that in a day or two. So we will get a chance to talk about it. But these are the four powers.
As we enter into a break period, some people do.
Yeah. Well, we enter into a break period, which is not much of a break, is it?
No.
Yeah.
And it's break time.
Yeah, it's a break time in which we're going to do other things which will require effort.
Yeah.
But we also going to take a break, watch Netflix or something. All right. So, but then it's not only those four powers. There are also other things that Shantideva mentions here, which are called the two strengths, which I wanted to highlight. So it says, let's look at verses 31 and 32. The army for the sake of accomplishing the welfare of sentient beings are interest, steadfastness, joy, and relinquishment. We just spoke about them. As we said that the first one is the most important, it says interest is developed through fear of suffering and contemplating its benefit. The it's here, I think that is referring to the benefit of interest in the Dhamma rather than the benefits of suffering or benefits of the fear of suffering. This is at least my interpretation of that. Then it says, thus, I shall abandon its discordant.
Well, can it not also be, like the first line is, for the sake of accomplishing the welfare of sentient beings, the benefits of that, accomplishing the welfare of sentient beings.
You said that contemplating its benefit could also be contemplating the benefit of accomplishing the welfare of sentient beings. Yeah, you can also understand like that. So then it says, I shall abandon its discordant classes and make effort in order to increase joyous effort. Third power for these four powers, interest, pride, joy, and relinquishment. And then he mentions two more, diligence and mastery. So these are the two, we'll look at them later on, but these two, diligence and mastery, are the two strengths that you join together with the four forces. So you have the strength of diligence, in which you become diligent in your practice. Well, you become diligent in doing what you ought to be doing and in avoiding what needs to be stopped, right? So that's one strength, the strength of just becoming diligent, getting down to the nuts and bolts and doing it. And then mastery or control, which means that you need to take control of your body and mind, which is something that we've mentioned before in relation to conscientiousness and alertness in chapter 4 and 5, looking at our physical and verbal actions and making sure that we take control over our physical and verbal actions. So altogether, we cultivate these four powers. We become interested in the Dhamma, in all the implications that we've mentioned a few minutes ago. We develop pride or steadfastness, self-confidence in our ability to do that, but also in thinking that I will not turn back until I accomplish my goal, right? This is the type of steadfastness that we need to develop. joy in what we're doing and relinquishment. With that, we need diligence. Of course, if we want to accomplish what we need to be doing, we need to be diligent, but we also need to exert control of our body and mind so that we do not get sidetracked. We do not get sidetracked by afflictive states of mind. So then, that was the brief presentation. Now, the extensive explanation is the extensive explanation of these 4 powers, beginning with the power of esteem. So the power of esteem or interest in the Dhamma, aspiration for the Dhamma, is, as we said, basically is looking at karma, which I thought it's also interesting in light of the way that we looked previously at laziness. We said that in order to avoid laziness, to overcome laziness, particularly some types of laziness, you need to contemplate teachings that are found within the stress of the path of the small scope, death and impermanence, precious human rebirth, the suffering of the miserable realm, and also the contemplation of karma is included within the stress of the path that are shared with those of the small scope. So here again, we look at sets of teachings that are found within the stress of the path of the small scope, but we of course look at them in a way with an attitude that is much more extensive than a small scope attitude. Here, our attitude is a fully blown Mahayana attitude. So, discarding wrongdoings, adopting qualities, examining the list of things to do and not to do. Then looking at it from the viewpoint of the effect. Then looking at the cause for esteem. Again, looking at mixed karma, solid white karma, reflecting on negative karma, and then reaching the conclusion of having to then develop a keen interest in the Dhamma. So we will continue with that tomorrow, but one thing that I wanted to finish with today is that as I look at chapter number 7, we've covered, first of all, the different types of laziness. And it seems that when you look at this material, you can approach it with an intellectual level, kind of gathering the knowledge, the things that Shantideva mentions here, but it's also a good opportunity to look at where our failings are or what we need to improve. It doesn't have to be a massive failing, but it's in some sense you can say that Shantideva here is talking specifically to me. You know, it's like, for example, laziness of being attracted to ignoble activities, or laziness of discouragement, thinking that it's just too hard. You know, someone like me will never be able to do it. So it is a personal advice for us, but particularly here when we look at, for example, the 4 powers, the power of esteem, the first one, it's like I ask myself, well, how much trust do I have in the working of karma? Particularly, we've covered today in Geshe-la's session these verses in which Shantideva says, we'll cover that tomorrow, but it says, I have not made offerings to the Bhagavan. I have not given the pleasure of great festivals. I have not performed actions for the teachings. I have not fulfilled the wishes of the poor. I have not granted fearlessness to the frightened, and I have not given happiness to the wretched. So it's more like I'm reading through those verses and I think to myself, well, did I do that? I mean, if Shantideva says that he hasn't done that, what about me? So it's a good opportunity to look at what Shantideva does here and find, I think, inspiration to, I think, look at some areas of our practice and just make improvements. Of course, it's difficult to be perfect right from the beginning, but sometimes we don't really think of having to go back to the basics and improving upon that. And this is what Shantideva is speaking about here.
I think it's, and even if you could say, I've done all of those, say, and with what mind did I do that? Like, was it with a bodhicitta motivation? Was it with something else?
Yeah, have a bodhicitta motivation. Was I totally joyful about it? Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, peeps.
Thank you.
Due to this virtue, I quickly become a Guru Buddha, and did all transmigratory beings without exception to that state. May the precious Supreme Bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that arise not decline, but increase more and more. In land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful, Chen Resurrectant and Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. You uphold the subduer's moral way, the serves in the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Majana's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers, honoring the three. Director of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. Thank you.